35 years after the Americans with Disabilities Act is passed, persons with disabilities are still viewed by many as burdens on society. The medical model is part of that problem. So today we're going to talk about that, talk about the value of persons with disabilities in society. I'm Annette Bourbonniere from Nothing Without Us, Stories and Discussions of Meaningful Inclusion. I am a 70-ish-year-old woman with short gray hair and wearing pink eyeglasses and sitting in a power wheelchair. Today, you are likely to see my service dog, Kirby, who you will notice is very fond of today's guest. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, leave me a like, please write some comments, tell your friends. This week marks the 1-year anniversary of this podcast, and your subscription would mean a lot to me. You can subscribe for free, but there are also paid tiers that have extra benefits. But the main series is available for free. Okay, so I am fortunate to have as my guest today, Sarah Everhart Skeels, one of the first people that was on this podcast a year ago.
A year ago?
Yeah.
What a difference a year makes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, what a year, right? Oh my God, what a year. You know, I mean, it's been, for this, it's been an interesting ride. I've learned a lot of technology. I've, really talked with some amazing people.
Yes.
Which I think has always been good. And then I did a little of my own spouting off, but.
You're allowed.
I am allowed. It's my podcast, right?
That's right.
There you go. Okay. So Sarah and I have known each other a long time.
Very long time. 1996? 1996. 97.
Yeah, 95, 96, 97, in that range, yeah.
That's a long time.
Yep, it has been. And we do the same work. We approach the whole accessibility and inclusion issue for people with disabilities from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
It's public health, which is your
my background.
Field, your background, your field, and I do it from economics, which is my background in my field.
Yes.
So, and it's good because that brings us, I think we bring a bigger picture of what is going on. And
when you can look at the same thing from different lens, different angle, you get to see a different perspective, which is always never a bad thing.
Right.
Never a bad thing.
Right, yeah, for sure.
Because the best solutions are those that involve the most number of people with the most diverse perspectives.
Right.
Because when you can find that common denominator, now perhaps you've found that solution that everybody can buy into.
Right. Or at least we get to contribute to the solution.
Correct.
I don't think the puzzle's ever going to be totally solved while I'm alive.
No.
You have a better shot at it.
Not really. We're building the plane while we're flying it.
Yeah, right. I know. So, people with disabilities still face a lot of discrimination, even though the ADA, if there is still an ADA in July, will be 35 years old.
Yep, 1990.
Yeah, right. And, the discrimination is based an awful lot on looking at us as burdens on society. And which is a terrible thing to think. I don't like thinking that I've never contributed anything.
I don't think it's possible that you can claim anybody as a burden just for existing as a human.
Right. And I know so many people with disabilities that really do contribute a lot.
A lot. But I think the contributions, right now when you are looking at this idea of burden, these contributions make us have to prove our worth in dollars, in capital, in the language of capitalism. Right. And we all live under capitalism. It's like living under the law of gravity. This is the reality that we have. We're not going to change that.
Right.
But I think that instead of always perceiving that difference is burden, maybe think about difference as another way, which, like we are going to talk about eventually, this idea of a new market. If you're looking to sell your stuff,
Yeah.
My money is just as green as everyone else's money. Last time I checked, if I can buy something with my purchasing power, I'm going to do it. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend my money in a place that wants me there.
Right. Exactly.
And there's a lot of us.
Right.
There's a lot more disabled people in this town, in this community, in this state than anybody wants to think.
Right.
It's like, well, I don't see them out there. Well, you're not looking hard enough. And guess what? What do you think disability looks like? Does it look like a net and eye? Yes. Does it look like a net and eye don't look like? Yes. It looks like everything. There's no
Right.
one way to be disabled. And so to make these assumptions about people based on nothing but maybe what you're seeing is a very ignorant view, especially if you're looking, I'm sorry to offend you, but it is ignorant. If you prefer a better word, it's uninformed.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Uninformed is just fine too. Get informed. If you know you're uninformed, be informed, especially if you're trying to find a new market. We're here
Right.
always.
Right. And
20% of the population.
Yep. Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. Actually, it's closer to 25%.
20, depending on the
Yeah,
measures.
1 in 4. Yeah, depending on whose statistics you're looking at. I think they closed down the CDC, but it was 25% of the population. Can you imagine 1 in 4 people in this country identify as having at least one disability, and some people more than one. So, I mean, that's it's the largest minority in the country,
Mm-hmm.
and yet we still face extraordinary discrimination.
Based on misinformation.
Right. That whole misinformation is a big bear. And it's also, based on, well, what she just said, do you view disability as, Sarah and myself, because we are visibly disabled, we get around in wheelchairs. But, that's a medical model.
Right.
And that defines disability in small groups.
Mm-hmm. Very segmented.
Right, exactly. And yet, that's not who the disabled population is.
Right.
It is much broader than that.
It crosses all age groups. It crosses all socioeconomic boundaries. It crosses all racial boundaries.
Right.
In fact, it is the one thing that anyone can be at any given time.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And it's not like it's contagious and we're coming for you. It isn't that. It's just a life experience. And the sooner we can culturally understand disability as a life experience, as something that everybody is going to, if you don't experience it, someone you know is going to,
For sure.
in your lifetime. This isn't a tragedy. It's human variation.
Yep.
It's that simple
Yeah.
and that complicated.
Right. But you say it's human variation, and I like that because, I often adopt a definition that you gave me when people start, well, there's physical and there's not, and they're all physical. Disability is the result of some physiological variant.
Physiological difference.
Yep. And it doesn't matter whether it's chemical, structural, or however you want to label it. Those things don't matter. Disability encompasses a range.
Then humans, for as long as
Right.
humanity's been around, disability has been around. Historically,
Yep.
if you go way, way back to Roman times, historians see really disability shows up in two distinct ways. It shows up in war, wounded warriors who
Right.
were funded by the state like we do now for our veterans. And then the other side of that was a lot of children who were sold the very beginnings of freak shows and like curiosity stuff.
Right.
Way back then, people who had disabled children would sell them to these little, or these people would either just be on display, or they would be servants or slaves or
beggars.
Well, the beggars came after that. The beggars came after that, and then the burden. That's where it all comes from. Is if you look historically, way back, disabled people were never incorporated fully into society, into white colonial society. Let's be very
Right.
clear here. When you look at indigenous cultures, that isn't what you see about disability. When you look at indigenous cultures, you see these communities making space for
Right.
human variation
Right.
and allowing people to contribute. You know, if you were blind, you fished at night. It worked perfectly. If it didn't matter, you could contribute. There were spaces to contribute. You weren't sent off into the margins like you see in our culture of today. So sometimes, Annette, I ask you, how much have we really evolved when we think about disability? And studying disability makes you think about this.
Right. And it sure does, because I often, with what's going on here, I really wonder how much we've evolved. We've devolved lately.
We are currently devolving.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah. So,
Unfortunately.
so that's a lot of what causes the discrimination. But with all the stuff that's going on today, we're going to try to talk about, well, what are some of the positive things? What is it we contribute? Let's talk about our value, because our value is significant. I did see an article, it may have been a LinkedIn article, I'm not quite sure, I didn't cite it, so I don't know. But talking about how a person with dyslexia is a truly valuable employee.
Yeah.
And it's something that really is pertinent to all people with disabilities. When you look at, not only do we go through the same studies and skill building as anybody else in any profession or other employment, but we bring skills that the average person doesn't have, because we have had to make some decisions. We have had to modify our approach based on, this is the standard approach, but we have had to modify ours to make it happen. So we are creative thinkers. We are resourceful people.
We are problem solvers because we solve problems all
Exactly.
day long, every day.
That's right. And that makes us extra valuable employees. In fact, you should pay us more. But let's start with equal pay and equal hours and
Yes.
getting the job.
Yes.
Getting the job, getting there.
Right. For example, I'm sure you've already said this to your audience many times, but the average job accommodation, what does everybody think it costs? What do you think it costs the average job accommodation to allow someone with a disability to contribute to work? Because work is more than just a paycheck.
Yeah, right.
That would be $500.
Max.
$500
For an individual.
for
right?
one person. $500.
Yeah,
So they can contribute how much more? 40 hours of their week?
right,
For $500, really?
right.
A qualified person who is going to come in and it's been
Exactly.
proven time after time, the studies that they've done on employment and disability are disabled workers show up more. They take less days off,
Right.
much to the contrary of what people will tell you. They are always excited to be, not always, that's ridiculous to say always, but show up on time and show up to work and do the work. There is no proof that disabled people can't perform in the workplace as successfully as those without disability. And I don't think it even matters. There is no comparison. They can just be successful in the workplace.
Right.
Because of their disability, not in spite of, because I'm
No.
tired of hearing it. I'm
Right.
tired of hearing this, like,
Yeah.
overcome and in spite of, and like,
No,
you take
we
this
have
stuff
extra
with you.
skills. It's because
Yes.
of our disabilities that we're better employees.
Right, because we figured it out.
Right,
sort of.
exactly. And if
Sort
you
of.
stopped looking at accommodations as something extra you're giving people, you're not.
No.
Accommodations are the tools you need to do the job.
And more likely, most of the time, something that's done for one person, like make the copier a little more accessible, for example,
Right.
makes it better for everyone.
Exactly.
It is hard to find in the 35 years I've been living with a disability in the workforce, in different spaces. Never have I asked for a suggestion to make something more accessible to me that somebody else without a disability had said, wow, that's so great you were able to do that because you got that moved.
Exactly.
I couldn't reach it before. It was taking me 5 minutes more to
Yep.
do what I was doing because I couldn't get to the printer. I couldn't get to the paper to put in the printer. It's those little things, but those things add up.
They do. They do.
So
They do.
sometimes you'll have somebody who has a disability who just sees things differently and wants to bring up something, and everybody else is like, wow, I hadn't thought of that. What a great idea.
Yeah, right. And you're going to see these ideas, by the way, all through society. You do see them, and you just don't recognize it.
Like the doors that slide open and close.
Yeah,
like
you're welcome.
Cuisinarts. Like Cuisinarts, thank you. That's food processors were designed for disabled people.
Right.
Thank you for the Cuisinart. You're welcome.
Yep. And the automatic doors in the grocery store, you don't remember when you had to have somebody pushing the door open while you got your carriage out. Or the curb cuts.
FaceTime. The deaf
FaceTime.
Community had been using apps before FaceTime was a thing. The deaf community has been using apps because they have a visual language and you have to be able to see it. And
right.
So there were apps way before we were FaceTiming that the deaf community was using to communicate. Right. So again, a lot of technology evolves because of a need, and then everybody else wants in on it too because it's a good idea.
Right, exactly. So you ought to look at us as a benefit to society.
As an asset.
A real asset.
Just like everyone else.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening. That was part one of my discussion with Sarah Everhart Skeels about the value of people with disabilities. As you could see, Kirby, the super service dog, decided he wanted to let us all know that he loves us too, and he wanted to be a part of all of this. He's very black, so you may not have seen him clearly. He blends in very easily, but he was definitely taking part today. So we're going to continue with the second part in a moment. But I wanted to thank you for listening. If you're taking a break now, please remember to come back for the second part. And in any case, please remember to drop us a like. Give me your comments. Those comments will help me make the podcast grow. It'll also help me to make sure I'm moving in a direction that you want to see. And so, and that is very important. Please tell your friends. Please subscribe also, but tell your friends about us too. Let your friends know that they can find us on patreon.com/nothingwithoutus. I can also be seen on YouTube, and you can find me on LinkedIn and Blue Sky. And, we're going to be presenting these podcasts on a regular basis. So again, I look forward to talking with you soon. I'm Annette from Nothing Without Us.